The bold and the beautiful Ridge walks in, hearts break, and Brooke is left to face the fire alone. The elegant streets of Europe were never meant to become the backdrop of heartbreak. But fate has other plans, and in The Bold and the Beautiful, even the most well-intentioned business trip can unravel decades of love, loyalty, and legacy. When Brooke Logan boarded that plane to Europe, she had no idea she was flying straight into the eye of a storm. What began as a routine Forrester business venture quickly spiraled into scandal, heartbreak, and international humiliation. A single night, a single mistake, a single knock on a hotel door, and now everything has changed. Brooke's arrival in Europe was uneventful at first. She was there to oversee final arrangements for an exclusive Forrester showcase in Paris and scout new materials in Milan. She dined with investors, toured ateliers, and carried the full weight of the Forrester brand on her shoulders. It was business as usual. Until it wasn't. Nick Marone had been out of Brooke's life for a long time. Their past was complicated and mixed with betrayal, intimacy laced with pain, but when Brooke bumped into him on a rainy evening in Paris, neither was prepared for the emotional flash flood it would trigger. One drink led to two. Old memories resurfaced. Laughter softened their edges. Then the hotel bar closed, but the conversation didn't. What started as closure became something else. By morning, the damage was done. Brooke awoke in Nick's hotel room, the weight of her choices crashing down like a tidal wave. It was meant to mean nothing. A lapse in judgment. A one-time mistake. But nothing in Brooke Logan's life stays hidden for long, and this time, the consequences were already on their way. Ridge Forrester, planning to surprise Brooke with a romantic weekend in Florence, had flown out in secret. Armed with flowers and anticipation, he envisioned a quiet reunion, a rekindling of their bond in one of Europe's most breathtaking cities. He arrived early. He called Brooke, but she didn't answer. Trusting his instincts, he made his way to her hotel. He knocked. No reply. And then her saw it. The door opened not to Brooke, but to Nick, shirtless, holding Ridge's own monogrammed dress shirt in his hands, same shirt Brooke had packed for Ridge to wear at their dinner. The moment froze. Brooke appeared behind Nick, her expression one of horror, guilt, and helplessness. There was no time to explain. No lie could have softened what Ridge saw with his own eyes. The betrayal was sharp, the pain immediate. Ridge said nothing at first. He simply turned, walked down the hallway, and left. Hours later, from a cafe in Florence, he sent Brooke a single message: "We're done." Word traveled faster than Brooke could book a flight home. Italian tabloids pounced on the scandal. American fashion queen in love triangle scandal. Paparazzi flooded the Forrester European offices. Distributors began pulling contracts. Social media exploded with speculation and ridicule. The once flawless image of the Forrester brand began to tarnish under the weight of public disgrace. Brooke Logan's face, the name, the legend was now the headline. Back in Los Angeles, the ripple effects hit hard. Steffi was the first to get the call. Then Eric, then Hope. The Forrester family, already wary of Brooke's checkered history with Ridge, now found themselves scrambling to contain a scandal none of them saw coming. The name Nick Marone became venom in every conversation. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was corporate. Brooke's actions had endangered everything. Brooke returned to LA days later, her composure shattered, her defenses thin. She walked into a cold reception. Ridge hadn't come home. His things were gone. Her calls went unanswered. Steffi refused to meet with her. Eric offered nothing but silence. Even Hope, her own daughter, looked at her with disbelief. The entire Forrester empire now stood like a wall in front of her. And she was alone. Nick, for his part, made a swift and calculated exit. Whether out of guilt or cowardice, he decided to remain in Europe, claiming he didn't want to make things worse. "If I return now," he told Brooke in a short voicemail, "it will just add fuel to the fire." He ended the call with a vague promise to stay in touch. But the damage had already been done. He left Brooke behind to face the storm alone, abandoned in a city where every corner now whispered her shame. The timing couldn't have been worse. Forrester Creations was on the verge of launching a new international expansion campaign. Investors were nervous. Retail partners called to pause negotiations. Designers began submitting resignations. The press hounded Ridge for comment. And when he finally did speak, his words were final. I have no comment on Brooke Logan's personal life. She no longer speaks for Forrester. Inside the company, sides were drawn. Steffi and Thomas wanted Brooke removed entirely. Hope fought back, but her protests lacked conviction. Even Carter, normally the voice of reason, advised that Brooke take a leave of absence. Brooke, humiliated but proud, refused. I made a mistake, she told the board. But I built this company with my hands. I won't walk away because I'm the one wearing the scarlet letter this time. The weeks that followed were brutal. Brooke was stalked by cameras, attacked online, and vilified by headlines. Ridge's ruin, betrayal in Florence, the Queen has fallen. Even former allies like Taylor Hayes found the narrative shifting in their favor. Taylor had warned Ridge about Brooke, had pleaded with him not to trust her again. Now her silence felt like a victory. Meanwhile, Ridge remained unreachable. He took up residence in Aspen, seeking solace in the mountains, far from scandal, far from Brooke. He ignored every message, refused every call. For Ridge, this wasn't just betrayal, it was confirmation. A pattern. A cycle that would never break. He had given Brooke countless chances, and this time, it ended with her in bed with his rival, wearing his shirt. Hope eventually confronted her mother. How could you? She asked. After everything, how could you do this to Ridge? Brooke had no answers. She wept. She begged. But in Hope's eyes, the damage was done. Even her own daughter didn't believe her anymore. At Forrester, whispers about Brooke's replacement began. Names were floated. Steffi saw an opportunity to rebrand the company, to erase the Logan era once and for all. She suggested Taylor take on a more visible leadership role. Thomas agreed. The board considered a full restructure. Brooke was still there in body, but in spirit was crumbling. In her lowest moment, she stood alone in the Forrester showroom, staring at a dress she once modeled, the same dress Ridge designed for her during their second wedding, a symbol of love that now meant nothing. She touched the fabric and whispered, "How did we get here?" But in true Brooke fashion, she refused to vanish. She began to rebuild slowly, quietly, with no Nick, with no Ridge, with no support but her own. She made a public statement, brief but unapologetic. I made a personal mistake. I'm human. I regret what happened, but I will not allow one night to define my life or my career. The backlash softened slowly. Fashion moved on. Scandals faded, but the scars remained. Brooke Logan, once the woman who had it all, now stands in the ruins of her choices. Ridge is gone. Nick disappeared. The Forrester family has turned its back. But in those ashes, there's still a spark. A woman broken, yes, but not defeated. The storm has passed, but the rebuilding has only just begun. And in the bold and the beautiful, nothing stays buried forever. Not love, not betrayal, and certainly not consequences. The bold and the beautiful Brooke's career on the brink. Nick pulls strings. And Steffi tightens the noose. What was meant to be a triumphant business trip for Brooke Logan turned into a professional and personal collapse of unprecedented proportions. Sent to Milan to finalize a high-profile luxury fabric deal, Brooke was at the top of her game, polished, persuasive, and confident that her decades of experience and the strength of the Forrester name would close the deal with ease. But the bold and the beautiful doesn't deal in happy endings without consequences, and for Brooke, one fateful night would set into motion a chain reaction that threatens to destroy everything she's built. Brooke's mission was simple: secure an exclusive partnership with Casa di Serra, an elite Italian textile supplier known for its unmatched silks and proprietary weaves. Forrester Creations had their eyes on Casa di Serra for months, hoping to lock them in before a rival fashion house could move in. Brooke was the obvious choice to lead the negotiations. Her name still carried weight in European markets, and the company trusted her charm and poise to seal the deal. What they didn't count on, what no one counted on, was Nick Marone. It was pure coincidence. Or maybe not. Brooke ran into Nick in a Milanese wine bar after her final pre-contract meeting. They hadn't seen each other in years. The conversation was awkward at first, but the wine flowed, and so did the memories. By the end of the evening, old wounds blurred into something tender and dangerous. They shared a room, and by morning, Brooke's future was already unraveling. She just didn't know it yet. Back in Florence, Ridge Forrester, unaware of the chaos unfolding, had flown in early to surprise Brooke. Flowers in hand, heart open, he arrived at her hotel in Lee to find Nick opening the door, holding Ridge's own shirt in his hands. Behind him, Brooke stood frozen, half-clothed, and guilt-ridden. That moment broke Ridge. No words, no explanations, no forgiveness. He turned around and walked away. Later, a text message arrived on Brooke's phone. "We're done." But the consequences didn't stop with Ridge's heartbreak. What neither Brooke nor Ridge realized in that moment was that someone had been watching. Whether it was a hotel staff member, a lurking paparazzo, or a rival executive with a grudge, the story leaked. By the next morning, it was everywhere: scandal at Forrester, Brooke Logan, Nick Marone, and a night of betrayal in Milan. The story swept across Italian media like wildfire. Casa di Sera, suddenly anxious about its brand being attached to a personal scandal involving betrayal, infidelity, and corporate impropriety, froze the deal. In LA, the fallout was immediate. Steffi Forrester, already skeptical of Brooke's position at the top of the Forrester hierarchy, wasted no time. Using the Milan scandal as her weapon, she went to Ridge and framed the situation not as personal betrayal but as a threat to the brand. She argued that Forrester's integrity was on the line, that customers and partners were watching, that investors were nervous. "If you don't make a decision, the board will," she warned. Her message was clear. Either Ridge cuts Brooke out or Forrester risks implosion. Ridge, still seething from the scene in Milan, didn't argue. At the same time, Brooke flew back to LA reeling. She walked into a Forrester office colder than she had ever felt. No one made eye contact. Whispers trailed behind her. Contracts were off the table. The European expansion was in limbo. Even hope, caught between defending her mother and preserving her own reputation, began to waver. Carter informed Brooke that the board was holding an emergency session. The writing was on the wall. Then came the twist. Just as the Casa di Sera deal was presumed dead, a quiet message came through to Forrester's European office. The contract was back on the table. The Milan partners were willing to proceed under very specific conditions. It wasn't Brooke's charm. It wasn't Steffi's threats. It wasn't Ridge's absence. It was a new intermediary, Marone Industries. The name stunned everyone. Unbeknownst to Brooke, Nick had used his leverage through dormant Marone family business ties to personally negotiate with Casa di Sera behind the scenes. He assured the Italian firm that their brand wouldn't be tarnished. He offered a private guarantee. He pulled every favor, made quiet payments, arranged exclusivity clauses, and convinced them to keep the deal alive for Forrester. For Brooke. When Brooke found out, she was stunned, furious, relieved, conflicted. The man who detonated her relationship had just saved her professional legacy. And now he held the one thing she couldn't afford to lose: control over her career. Worse, the board now saw Nick as a shadow partner in one of the most valuable contracts in the company. Ridge, hearing the news, was livid. "First my wife," he snapped, "now my company." But it was too late. The deal had gone through, and Nick's name was now buried in the fine print. Brooke confronted Nick, demanding to know why he'd interfered. "I didn't do it for me," he said. "I did it so they couldn't bury you." But Brooke didn't know whether to feel grateful or trapped. Nick had reinserted himself into her life, not just emotionally but strategically. Now she owed him at least. That's how it felt. The one man who ruined everything was now the only reason she still had a seat at the table. Steffi, learning about Nick's involvement, exploded. She used it to further her campaign to unseat Brooke. She accused her of manipulating contracts through backroom deals. She claimed Forrester was now entangled in Marone business without consent. She called a vote of no confidence. Eric remained neutral. Thomas supported Steffi. Hope abstained. Carter warned that pushing Brooke out could destabilize the Milan deal again. In the end, the board compromised. Brooke would remain, but under strict oversight. Every move scrutinized, every decision approved. Brooke was humiliated but not defeated. She returned to her office, closed the door, and stared out the window. Everything she had spent her life building, her love, her career, her family's respect now hung by threads. And the man who broke her world was now holding it together with his. Rich refused to speak to her. He buried himself in design, returned to Aspen, and shut out the world. When confronted by Thomas, he said simply, "There's nothing left to say. I saw what I saw." Steffi offered no olive branch. Taylor remained silent. Only Donna tried to support Brooke privately, but even she admitted, this time, it's going to take more than apologies. Meanwhile, Nick stayed in Europe watching from afar. He sent no more messages, no follow-ups, just silence. He had done what he came to do, save Brooke's career. But he'd also lit a match to every bridge she had. Whether that was calculated or not, only Nick knows. And so Brooke Logan, once the queen of Forrester, now walks the halls with quiet determination. She's been shamed, betrayed, cut off, and backed into a corner. But Brooke has always been a survivor. And if her history has proven anything, it's that when the world turns its back on her, she doesn't disappear. She rebuilds. But the question still hangs over her: what will she rebuild this time? Her career, propped up by a man she no longer trusts. Her relationship with Ridge, already broken beyond repair. Her place in a family that's sharpening knives behind every smile. Only time will tell. But in the bold and the beautiful, redemption is never free, and every comeback comes with a cost.